The year is 2025. Right now. This very moment. And according to two of history's most accurate prophets, we're not just living through another ordinary year. We're living through the beginning of something catastrophic. Something that could reshape America and the entire world forever. Their names? Nostradamus, the French mystic who wrote his visions in cryptic verses 5 centuries ago. And Baba Vanga, the blind Bulgarian seer who predicted 9/11, the rise of ISIS, and the 2004 tsunami with chilling accuracy. Both of them looked into the future. Both of them saw 2025. And both of them saw the same terrifying pattern emerging. But here's what makes your blood run cold. Their predictions aren't just about distant wars or abstract disasters. They're about America. About what's happening right now in Washington, in our economy, in our skies. Events that are already unfolding as you watch this. So the question isn't whether you believe in prophecies. The question is, are you ready to hear what they saw? Let me take you back to 1555. A physician named Michel de Nostradamus sits in his candlelit study in southern France, writing feverishly. His eyes are wild, his hands trembling. He's seeing things. Visions of a future so distant, so alien, that he can barely find words to describe them. He writes in quatrains, 4-line verses deliberately obscure, coded, designed to hide their meanings from authorities who might burn him for heresy. But those who study his work, who decode his metaphors, claim he predicted Hitler, Napoleon, the atomic bomb, and even the assassination of JFK. Now fast forward to 1996. A small house in Bulgaria. An old blind woman named Vangelia Gushtarova, known to the world as Baba Vanga, lies on her deathbed. She spent her entire life making predictions with an accuracy rate that scientists estimate at 85%. She predicted the sinking of the Russian submarine Kursk. She predicted that the 44th president of the United States would be black. She even predicted the exact year of her own death. In her final days, she speaks about 2025. And what she says makes everyone in the room go silent. Two prophets, 5 centuries apart. Different continents. Different methods. But when you line up their predictions for 2025, the patterns are impossible to ignore. And they all point to one terrifying conclusion. America is about to face its greatest test since the Civil War. Let's start with the most shocking prediction. The one that's already making headlines in international intelligence communities. Baba Vanga said that in 2025, a world leader, one of the most powerful men on earth, would be assassinated. Not by an enemy nation. Not by terrorists. But by one of his own people. Someone from within his inner circle. She didn't name names. She never did. But she gave clues. She said this leader would be from the land of the bear, a phrase historians universally associate with Russia. Vladimir Putin. According to her vision, someone close to Putin, perhaps a general, perhaps an oligarch, someone who has finally had enough of the endless conflicts, the international isolation, the economic collapse, will make a desperate decision. They'll believe that killing Putin is the only way to save their country, the only way to stop the madness. But here's the terrifying part. Baba Vanga said this assassination won't bring peace. It will make everything worse. Because when Putin falls, there will be a power vacuum. And in that vacuum, chaos. Multiple factions fighting for control. Nuclear weapons in the hands of unstable actors. And America, whether we like it or not, will be pulled into the storm. But that's not the prophecy that keeps Pentagon analysts awake at night. Nostradamus wrote something even more disturbing. In one of his most famous quatrains, he described the red adversary becoming frightened and putting the great ocean in danger. For decades, scholars interpreted the red adversary as Russia, because of the Soviet Union's association with the color red. But in recent years, a new interpretation has emerged. What if he wasn't talking about Russia at all? What if he was talking about China? Think about it. China's flag is red. The Communist Party rules under the banner of red. And right now, in 2025, China's influence is growing at a pace that terrifies American strategists. Their economy is surging. Their military technology is advancing faster than ours. And their ambitions in the Pacific, particularly regarding Taiwan, are becoming impossible to ignore. Nostradamus said the red adversary would put the great ocean in danger. The Pacific Ocean. The South China Sea, where American and Chinese naval forces play a deadly game of chicken every single day. Military analysts are already warning that a conflict over Taiwan could erupt at any moment. And if it does, America will have to make an impossible choice. Defend Taiwan and risk World War III, or abandon our ally and watch our credibility collapse. Either way, the great ocean will be in danger. just as Nostradamus predicted. But let's bring this closer to home. Let's talk about what these prophets saw happening inside America itself. Nostradamus wrote about a giant that would suffer economic catastrophe in 2025. A giant that would face unprecedented challenges but also unprecedented opportunities for transformation. The giant is America. There's no question about that. But what's the economic catastrophe? Look around. Inflation is crushing middle-class families. The national debt has reached levels that economists call unsustainable. Banks are nervous. The stock market swings wildly based on a single tweet from the president. And speaking of the president, Nostradamus scholars point to a specific passage that seems to describe Donald Trump with eerie accuracy. The prophet wrote about a powerful, controversial, and highly influential leader who would face intense opposition, but would persist in power despite attempts to remove him. Does that sound familiar? Trump survived 2 impeachment attempts. He survived multiple indictments. He even survived an assassination attempt during the 2024 campaign. A bullet that came within inches of ending his life in front of thousands of witnesses. And now he's back in the White House, just as Nostradamus seemed to predict. But here's where it gets disturbing. The same passage that describes this leader also warns that he will face another assassination attempt. One that might succeed. Nostradamus wrote that this leader would be killed by a rival nation. Not by a lone gunman. Not by domestic terrorists. By a foreign power. Is that possible? Could a nation-state actually attempt to assassinate an American president in 2025? Intelligence agencies take this threat seriously. Very seriously. Because in an era of drones, cyber warfare, and sophisticated espionage, the old rules don't apply anymore. An assassination doesn't require a lone gunman on a grassy knoll. Could be a poisoning, a staged accident, a cyber attack on Air Force One systems. And if it happens, if an American president is killed by a foreign power, that's not just a tragedy. That's an act of war. And America's response would be swift, overwhelming, and potentially apocalyptic. But let's say these darker predictions don't come true. Let's say America avoids assassination attempts, avoids war with China, avoids economic collapse. We still have to worry about what's coming from above. Nostradamus wrote about fire in the sky and a long trail of sparks that would appear without warning. His biographers interpret this as an asteroid impact. A celestial body that Earth scientists don't detect until it's too late. Sound far-fetched? Here's the thing, it almost happened in late 2024. An asteroid was pulled into Earth's orbit by our planet's gravity. It circled us for days before continuing on its trajectory. Astronomers admitted they didn't see it coming until it was already here. If its angle had been slightly different, if its speed had been slightly faster, it could have impacted Earth with the force of multiple nuclear bombs. And that might not have been the asteroid Nostradamus saw. Because in his vision, the impact causes a series of natural disasters that threaten human survival. Scientists confirm this isn't paranoia, it's statistical inevitability. Earth has been hit by extinction-level asteroids before. It will be hit again. The only question is when. And according to Nostradamus, when might be 2025. But wait, take a breath. Because not all the predictions are apocalyptic. Vanga made one prophecy that completely breaks the pattern of doom and gloom. She said that in 2025 humanity would finally, definitively, undeniably make contact with extraterrestrial life. And not in some shadowy, covered-up way. Not in a classified military base that the public never hears about. She said the contact would be open, public, impossible to deny. Imagine that for a moment. Every news channel, every social media feed, every government in the world simultaneously confirming, we are not alone. UFO sightings have skyrocketed in recent years. The Pentagon has admitted to documenting unidentified aerial phenomena that defy known physics. Former military officials have testified under oath that the U.S. government has recovered non-human craft. And in 2025, according to Vanga, the truth will finally come out. Not through leaks or whistleblowers but through direct contact. She said these beings would be far more advanced than us, both technologically and spiritually. And their arrival could be the catalyst humanity needs to evolve. To stop fighting among ourselves. To solve the crises that threaten our survival. In other words, aliens might be the only thing that can save us from ourselves. It sounds insane. But remember, this is the same woman who predicted that Barack Obama would be president decades before anyone knew his name. The same woman who predicted the rise of ISIS before it existed. So maybe, just maybe, first contact isn't science fiction. Maybe it's imminent history. Let's talk about something that's already happening. Something you can see with your own eyes if you know where to look. Nostradamus warned that 2025 would see a dramatic increase in food prices. So dramatic that he wrote, "The price of wheat will rise so much that man will eat his neighbor." Scholars don't think he meant literal cannibalism. They interpret it as metaphor for social collapse. For desperation so extreme that civilized people turn savage. And look at what's happening right now. Climate change is devastating crop yields. Droughts in the Midwest. Floods in California. Supply chains still haven't fully recovered from the pandemic. And geopolitical tensions threaten grain exports from Ukraine and Russia, two of the world's largest wheat producers. Food prices are already climbing. The UN warns that we're heading toward a global food crisis. Famine in Africa and the Middle East is spreading. And if it gets bad enough, if American families start struggling to afford basic groceries, if supermarket shelves start going empty, then what? History shows us what happens when people can't feed their children. They riot. They loot. They fight. Neighbor turns against neighbor. Community bonds dissolve. Nostradamus predicted empty supermarkets, mass looting, streets taken over by fear. He predicted that even good people, people who've always followed the law, would be driven to extremes when survival is at stake. Is America really that fragile? Could we really descend into chaos over food shortages? Ask anyone who lived through Hurricane Katrina. Ask anyone who saw what happened during the early days of COVID when people fought over toilet paper. Now imagine that, but sustained. Not for days or weeks but months, years. That's the future Nostradamus saw. And it starts in 2025. But perhaps the most unsettling prediction isn't about any single event. It's about a pattern. Both Nostradamus and Baba Vanga warned that 2025 wouldn't just be a difficult year. It would be the beginning of a cascade. The first domino in a chain reaction that continues for decades. Baba Vanga said that communism would return to the center of debate by 2076. That's 50 years from now. Which means the ideological shifts beginning in 2025 will reshape the entire global order for half a century. Think about what that means. The Cold War ended in 1991. Capitalism won. Democracy spread. We thought history had a clear direction. But now, China's model of authoritarian capitalism is thriving. Russia is resurgent. Even in the West, young people are questioning whether capitalism can solve climate change, inequality, and technological disruption. The old certainties are crumbling. And according to these prophets, 2025 is when the cracks become canyons. Let me tell you about something that doesn't get enough attention in these prophecies. Nostradamus wrote extensively about natural disasters in 2025. Not caused by war or human error but by nature itself. Meteorological phenomena with the capacity to threaten human survival, his interpreters claim. We're already seeing it. Record-breaking hurricanes. Wildfires that consume entire towns. Heat waves that make parts of the planet uninhabitable. And it's accelerating. Scientists have been warning us for decades. But Nostradamus saw it 5 centuries ago. He described cities underwater. Populations forced to migrate en masse. Governments collapsing under the weight of climate refugees. And he specifically pointed to 2025 as a tipping point. The year when the damage becomes irreversible. When even the skeptics can no longer deny what's happening. America will be hit particularly hard, according to climate models. Coastal cities flooding. Agricultural heartlands turning to dust. Infrastructure failing under extreme weather. And here's the cruel irony. The country that contributed most to climate change will suffer some of its worst consequences. Now let's address the elephant in the room. The question you're probably asking, are these prophecies real? Or just vague statements that people interpret after the fact to fit whatever happens? It's a fair question. Skeptics point out that Nostradamus wrote in such obscure language that you could make his quatrains mean almost anything. That Baba Vanga's predictions were often recorded by others, not written down by her directly. But here's what's harder to explain away, the hits. The specific, detailed predictions that came true against all odds. Nostradamus wrote about a great leader from the land of gold, who would be struck down while riding in an open vehicle. JFK was assassinated in an open-top limousine in Dallas, the city whose economy was built on oil, black gold. He wrote about 2 great rocks making war, and the sky burning at 45 degrees. The 2 atomic bombs dropped on Japan, and Hiroshima is located at approximately 45 degrees latitude. Baba Vanga predicted that steel birds would attack 2 brothers, and caused them to fall. In 2001, 2 planes hit the Twin Towers in New York. These aren't vague metaphors twisted to fit events. These are specific details that aligned with reality in ways that defy probability. So when these same prophets warn about 2025, can we really afford to dismiss them? Let me tell you something that's not in the mainstream analysis of these prophecies. Something that connects all of these predictions into a single coherent warning. Both Nostradamus and Baba Vanga weren't just predicting random disasters. They were warning about a great test. A moment when humanity has to choose between 2 paths, evolution or extinction. Baba Vanga said the alien contact would force us to evolve, to question everything we think we know, to realize that our petty conflicts are meaningless in the cosmic scale. Nostradamus wrote about a great transformation that would emerge from chaos. A new world order, not in the conspiratorial sense but in the sense of a fundamental restructuring of how human civilization operates. The assassinations, the wars, the economic collapse, the climate disasters, these aren't separate events. They're pressure points, forcing humanity to either come together or tear itself apart. And 2025 is when we find out which path we choose. Here's something that should terrify you. Wealthy elites are already preparing for these prophecies to come true. Research shows a massive increase in bunker construction since 2023. Not just in remote areas but under luxury estates in California, New York, and Texas. Billionaires are buying properties in New Zealand, considered one of the safest places if global civilization collapses. They're not doing this because of political anxiety or pandemic fears. They're doing this because their analysts, people with access to intelligence the rest of us never see, are telling them something big is coming. They've read the same prophecies we're discussing, and they're taking them seriously enough to spend millions on survival preparations. So if the people with the most information are preparing for catastrophe, what does that tell you? Let's talk about King Charles for a moment. Because there's a prophecy about him that directly impacts America's relationship with Britain. Nostradamus wrote about the King of the Isles being forcibly expelled and replaced by someone who will not have the mark of a king. Scholars interpret this as the end of the British monarchy. Not through revolution but through irrelevance. Charles, according to these interpreters, will be the catalyst. Why does this matter to America? Because this special relationship between the US and UK has been a cornerstone of Western power for over a century. If Britain descends into political chaos, if the monarchy collapses, it creates a vacuum in Europe that Russia and China will rush to fill. And America will be forced to choose, spend resources propping up a failing ally, or let Europe fracture and deal with a much more hostile continent. Either way, our strategic position weakens. Just as Nostradamus predicted. There's a prophecy that hasn't gotten enough attention. Nostradamus wrote about biological weapons being deployed in 2025. Baba Vanga echoed this, warning that some country would launch a biological attack, though she didn't specify who or where. In the age of COVID, this hits differently, doesn't it? We've seen how a virus can shut down the entire world. Now imagine if one was deliberately engineered and deployed as a weapon. The technology exists. Gain-of-function research continues in labs around the world. And the geopolitical tensions are at levels not seen since the Cold War. A biological attack wouldn't look like a traditional war. No missiles, no invasions. Just a silent spread of disease that cripples economies, overwhelms hospitals, and creates panic. And by the time you realize it's an attack and not a natural outbreak, it's too late to contain. This is one of those predictions that sounds like paranoid fiction, until you remember that both prophets have track records that are disturbingly accurate. Let me share something about Mars that sounds crazy but might be the most important prophecy of all. Nostradamus wrote about celestial fire on another planet and the darkening of Mars' light. Modern interpreters believe he was describing human colonization of Mars, something Elon Musk has publicly committed to beginning in 2025. But here's the question: why would Mars' light darken? What does that mean? Some theorists suggest it's metaphorical, that humanity's expansion to Mars will somehow diminish our view of the planet. That once we're there, once we contaminate it with our presence, it loses its mystique. Others think it's literal. That the first human activities on Mars, mining, construction, terraforming attempts, will literally change the planet's appearance from Earth. Either way, Nostradamus saw humanity reaching Mars, which means he saw us surviving 2025's challenges. That might be the most hopeful prophecy of all. Here's what nobody talks about: the prophecies give us a choice. Nostradamus never said his visions were inevitable. He said they were warnings, possibilities. futures that could be avoided if humanity made different choices. Baba Vanga said the same thing. She insisted that prophecy wasn't about predicting a fixed fate, but about showing people what happens if they continue down their current path. So maybe the point isn't to panic about 2025. Maybe the point is to wake up. To recognize that the conflicts, the climate crisis, the inequality, the technological disruption, these are real challenges that demand real solutions. And if we keep pretending everything is fine, if we keep letting politicians distract us with culture wars while the foundations crumble, then yes, the prophecies will come true. But if we change course, if we demand better, if we come together instead of tearing each other apart, then maybe we write a different future. One that Nostradamus and Baba Vanga never saw. Because we changed the variables they were calculating from. Let me bring this back to you. To your life. Right now. You might be thinking, okay, but what can I do? I'm not a world leader. I can't stop wars or prevent asteroids. And you're right. You can't. None of us can. But here's what you can do. You can prepare. Not in a paranoid, doomsday prepper way, but in a practical, responsible way. Build community connections. Know your neighbors. Have emergency supplies. Stay informed. Support leaders who take long-term threats seriously. And most importantly, don't let fear paralyze you. These prophecies, whether they come true or not, are a reminder that we live in consequential times. That our choices matter. That history is being written right now in 2025, and we're all part of it. So the question isn't whether Nostradamus and Baba Vanga were right. The question is, what are you going to do with the time we have? Here's the final piece of the puzzle. The one that ties everything together. Both prophets spoke about 2025 not as the end, but as the beginning, the opening chapter of a much longer story. If they're right, if we face economic collapse, political assassinations, conflicts, climate disasters, and even alien contact, then 2025 is the crucible. The forge where a new humanity is either born or where the old one dies. And 50 years from now, in 2076, when Baba Vanga said the great transformation would be complete, our grandchildren will look back at 2025 and say, that's when everything changed. The question is, will they say it with horror or with hope? That depends on us. On the choices we make in the months ahead. On whether we let fear divide us or let purpose unite us. The prophecies are written. But the ending isn't. We still have time to decide how this story ends. So pay attention. Stay vigilant. Question everything. Support each other. Because if Nostradamus and Baba Vanga taught us anything, it's this. The future isn't something that happens to us. It's something we create. And 2025? This is our moment to decide what kind of future we want to build. The prophets showed us the warnings, the red flags, the dangers ahead. Now it's up to us to prove them wrong, or to prove them right. The choice as always was ours. And the clock is ticking. Share this message with everyone you know. Because in times of prophecy, awareness is the first step toward survival. And maybe, just maybe, together we can write a future that even the greatest seers never saw coming. The question isn't whether you believe in prophecies. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? 2025 has just begun. And according to those who claim to see the future, we haven't seen anything yet.